Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Robin Truslow, Public Relations Coordinator for Calvert Library. We also have Renee Stadelman here from Calvert Library. She's going to help moderate during the question period. This event today came out of feedback from last fall's big conversation, Dismantling Racism and Privilege, where we talked about racial disparities in healthcare and health outcomes. And there was a real sense among attendees that offering a training on advocating for yourself would really empower our community to advocate for themselves and their loved ones at healthcare appointments and healthcare settings. And we know that speaking up won't solve all the problems, and we know there will be other trainings we need to offer for other audiences, but it might help in individual situations. We're super excited to host Ms. Loretta Veney, who has done hundreds of these presentations. She's an author, an advocate, a caregiver, and she'll do about an hour's worth of content, and then we'll open to questions from you all. We have Dr. Folsom Elder from the Health Department joining us today, so she can help with questions. Liz Chandlee is here from CalvertHealth, our hospital. Sarah Simmons is here from Calvert Hospice. So we have a lot of good resources in the room, and we've had a lot of partners to join in helping us put this together. Big Conversation, the Health Department, Commission for Women, Calvert Health, a lot of library systems. I mentioned that they've helped us promote it. So if you're from another county other than Calvert, feel free to tell us where you are. I know Howard County is represented, Charles County, Enoch Pratt, Kent County, Prince George's, Garrett and St. Mary's all helped us promote this event. So we appreciate the folks that are here and look forward to sharing the information. So I'm going to turn it over. You're welcome to put your questions in the chat, and we're going to hold them till we've gotten through the presentation. But as we go, you might think of questions, and if there's a particular slide that it relates to, you might want to reference that. But we will go back and hopefully answer all your questions. We've booked a whole hour for questions if we need it. So we'll see how that goes. And for now, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Veney. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robin. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. You all look bright and happy out there this morning. And so I am thrilled to be here for this really important presentation. And I hope that you were able to get a lot from it. So we'll go ahead and kick it right off. We have just a few objectives we want to cover today. Obviously, we're going to talk about what an advocate is, what do they do or should they do. I'm going to give you what I think are a lot of best practices of how we not only can advocate for all of our loved ones, but also advocating for ourselves, which is truly an important concept. So that will be sprinkled throughout the presentation. Not only will we talk about what we can do for others, but making sure that we don't neglect ourselves in the process. So I hope that all makes sense. All right. So first things first, I define everything. So if you have never seen Loretta before, one of the things I always do is try to define what we're actually talking about. Everybody has their own, definition of different things, and it might mean different things to different people. So when we're referring to advocacy today, we're talking about, someone speaking up in support of an idea or an action. And so in this case, typically what we're talking about in advocating for someone else, speaking up for them, especially folks who cannot speak up for themselves. And I think that's really an important key for us. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So who can be an advocate? Pretty much anybody. A lot of the folks who take on this role are related to the person in some way, shape, or form. There can be a friend. A lot of professional caregivers do this as well, and health advisors, which we'll talk about where you can find all of these folks. And so two primary things: protecting both the person and their rights. And that is such a key thing. You're looking at a picture of my 92-year-old mom. That's Miss Doris. She turned 92 on February 18th. And the shirt that her caregivers bought for her says, "I turned 92 in the quarantine of 2021, and none of you are invited." That's just like the best shirt ever. The best shirt ever, right? So, I wasn't even invited. I'm looking at her through the door. So, but then I took her balloons over. If you remember that day, that was the day of the ice storm. So not much was moving. I took her balloons and cake over the day before. But when I'm talking about advocating for my loved one, this is the woman right here, and love her with all my heart and would do anything for her. So that's the advocacy we're talking about. Now, why do we need advocates? Well, a lot of people aren't good at representing themselves. They just accept what people tell them, be them doctors or social workers or whatever. They just, okay, and kind of go along. And that's not always in their best interest. So an advocate is there to speak up for the folks that they are representing. And even more importantly is that third item. They provide assistance, especially during difficult doctor appointments. Suppose, for example, they're going to the doctor on this day to learn about their, cancer diagnosis. And the doctor, I know I talk fast. So the doctor might be saying, okay, well, it's stage 2. You're going to do 12 weeks of chemo, and then we're going to switch and do, 6 weeks of radiation. And you're like, what? Slow down. And so, you really want to, is they're trying to process, you just said the word cancer, and then they go on with the rest of the communication without allowing you to process it. So hopefully the advocate can hear some of the things that the person that we're advocating for might not be able to hear right then. They're still focused on the word cancer and they didn't hear anything after that. And I'm sure we've all been in situations with folks where that has been the case. So we really want to do that. And I think those people who step up to be advocates, they really are doing a labor of love. So you can see one of the articles Mom and I were in, I absolutely consider everything I do for my mom to be a labor of love. So that's cool. Now, I was asked to talk about why we need to advocate for ourselves. And when people say, I'm a fierce advocate for my mother, there's usually always a story behind that. Now, I was raised to follow all the instructions that the doctor says do. You didn't argue with the doctor, you just did what they said. And in the late 1980s, I started to have all this pain and, never could get to the bottom of it. My gynecologist kept telling me that there was nothing wrong with me. And I believed her for years. And that was obviously not the smartest thing to do. And one of the quotes, we were going back and forth this week about questions that people wanted to ask in advance of this session. One amazing person, submitted as part of a question and her sharing, she said, we have to recognize we have power and we need to use that power so we can have better health outcomes. So I let this doctor, who I thought had my best interest at heart, I, believed her when she said there was nothing wrong with me. And I stuck with her over the years. And that turned out to be a horrible decision on my part. And, I'm an advocate, a huge advocate for myself now, because what I learned later, I simply had what should have been a really easy case of endometriosis to fix. It's not a tough, it's not a really difficult disease to treat. However, mine went untreated for years before my boss finally insisted that I go to his wife's doctor because he thought my doctor was crazy. And it turned out that my waiting years to ask questions and change doctors and all of that almost cost me my life. It took me 13 years to get well. I was in the hospital 42 times. I had 21 operations. It was in every major organ that I have. People laugh at me that I'm an organ donor. And my husband used to always say, they're going to be mad at you because when they open you up, you don't have hardly anything left. And I have that doctor to thank. And I try to help any other person avoid that. So when my new doctor, who knew my previous doctor, asked her, why didn't you test her for endometriosis? You had her in the hospital for a week. I was down at GW and he said, why would you not do this test? How was I supposed to suggest it? I had never even heard of endometriosis. And she said, because in her experience, Black people didn't get this disease. Well, she almost cost me my life. She is the reason I never had kids. Thankfully, I have a stepdaughter with my husband, but she changed the entire course of my life. So there's my mother standing next to me, after operation number 17. And I don't have a whole lot of everything left, but, impacted my kidneys. They had to move my bladder to a new position. I had a piece in my brain. And all kinds of places that you usually don't find endometriosis. And so that is my story in terms of why I advocate, so fiercely for now myself and others. And when I say your life really could depend on it, I think the one blessing about my mother's dementia is the fact that she has finally forgotten about all the 13 years that she didn't know if I was going to live or die. And so that is really what spurred me to speak up for myself and for others. So I hope you can take something away from that story. But as you can see, I'm still as happy as I can be. And, I try to turn that situation into something positive for other people. All right, so we know what an advocate is. What skills do they need to be successful? And the first one's kind of funny. It says assertiveness. That does not mean aggression or being too passive. Now, my mom has a really, really passive personality. When my aunt had questions about all my hospitalizations, or, she wanted more of an understanding of the next surgery I was going to have, my mother just sat there kind of paralyzed, and my aunt or my husband did all the talking. And I couldn't think of, a lot of the questions myself. And one of the things that, since we're talking about racial disparities sometimes, one of the things that happens a lot with Black women is that we get that label of being an angry Black woman when we're too assertive. And so we really want to find that balance. I try to never use sarcasm, or even if I want to, when you're doing the wrong thing, I try to especially watch my tone, because tone is really what takes being assertive to that aggressive level that time. So that's one of the basic skills. You have to be really comfortable with talking with the doctors and other healthcare people who are involved in this, whatever case that you're working on. And there are a lot of people, my mother was in this group, there are a lot of people intimidated by titles and doctors. And my mother was taught, don't argue with people. Just when the doctor says do this, you do that. And that's not always wise. So just be really comfortable. Don't be intimidated by anybody's anything behind their name, because they're still people. I have a lot of advocates that I work with, and a couple of the support groups that I moderate, and some of that I belong to. And a lot of people sign up to be an advocate without ever thinking about how much time it's going to take. They think they're volunteering to just, well, I'm going to go to the doctor with Sue, and then she wants me to take some notes. But then that process carries on like, oh, I didn't know it was going to take all this time. So please don't commit, to doing this if you don't have the time to, commit to it. And that's really important. You also need to be really organized, because as we talked about, you want to be really on point for everything that person needs, without neglecting the things you need to be organized with in your own life. So I think sometimes when we neglect our own needs because we're focused on this other person, we're doing ourselves a disservice. So you really have to be good at the multitasking thing. Put a star next to that. If you're taking notes, put a star next to the whole thing about privacy. If you have committed to being someone's advocate, please do not share with the church members and the next door neighbor. Oh, you won't believe what Bessie's doctor said. She got to lose 50 pounds. I mean, please don't discuss other people's issues outside of the circle. And that is really important. That can lead to some pretty bad things. All right, so you think you might need one, or you want to recommend one to someone else. They don't have anybody to speak up for them. They've been trying to do all their own driving and all that in the midst of all these health things that they have going on. So how can you find one? Well, the Calvert County has two great resources for you, the Calvert County Office on Aging, and then the resources for seniors. I've been on both of those sites. I live in Prince George's County, but I am familiar with, I have really good friends. 5 of my godkids live in Calvert County, so I am quite familiar with some of the resources. If you want to just check out some others, the National Association of Senior Advocates, who knew that was a thing? But there it is, and they vet their people incredibly well. in terms of background checks. When you use them, you can pretty much guarantee you're going to get somebody that is qualified and really able to do the job. Other areas, now in my case with my mom's Alzheimer's, I've used the Alzheimer's Association a lot. And AARP, if you understand their mission at all at AARP, they are advocates for all seniors. And usually that's how you know you're getting old, when you get your AARP card, but I welcome my little card. I earned every bit of this white hair. And so I signed up for whatever discounts I can get through AARP. So there's a lot to advocacy and how we can use it. So that's how you find them if you need one and don't have anybody to be that for you. So the next couple of slides are just some what I would call best practices, the top tips for being successful in this role. And first and foremost, wow, I have sort of refereed some pretty intense family disagreements about what should happen with mom or dad or Aunt Bessie. This could all be avoided were we to include the person in the process when they can still participate in the dialogue. In my mother's case, that was years ago. This is year 15 with my mom's diagnosis. And so you're seeing a really young picture of her. She's in the left with the light brown top and holding the green barbells with the blue slacks. And this was probably the year before she was diagnosed in 2006. So she was still making all of her decisions and whatnot, and we wrote everything down. So the second bullet says, if they're unable to tell you about their presence at this point, if I had waited too long to know about my mom, think about all the things they value and what their long held beliefs and passions were. And in my mother's case, my mother had one wish only in terms of her future care, and that was that we, her children, would not force her to live with us. She made us sign a document that we would, I have the original right over here. Oh my goodness. I don't know why. I mean, we're such great people. Why would you not want to live with us? And my husband would have loved to have had her there, but that was not the case. So if you forget anything else about my mom, if you were friends with her, you would know my mother's number one rule was she wanted to be independent. That is why my mother lives in a group home today. That is her wish. And so I have helped to financially support that decision of hers, and I will keep that wish forever. And then the third bullet is really just about the more we know about them. And even if you're just getting into this advocacy thing and you don't know anything about this person other than they've been your church friend for 10 years, talk to some other people in their life to see what you can get from them that will help you in the decision making of what's best for them. And on this slide, I think the last bullet is just the key. Please know, advocacy is not about you. Well, I think you should do so-and-so. It's not about you. And I tell people that all the time. We are doing this for someone else. So we have to put our own, when you commit to do this, you are also committing to putting your own feelings and belief aside and doing the best you can to advocate for that person. A lot of people get caught up on that. They want to talk Betsy into doing what they think they should do. And it should work in reverse of that. So I've sort of moderated a lot of arguments about that as well. So other tips really that I think helps with being the best advocate you can be was becoming knowledgeable about whatever the illness or the issue is that you're going to be advocating for. This was a tough thing for me in 2006, because not only was that the year that my mother was diagnosed with dementia, it was also the year my sister, who was 9 years older than me, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and my mother's baby sister, there were 19 years between them, was diagnosed with terminal colon cancer, and she was given 6 months to live. So it was quite the year for us. But I did my absolute best to learn everything about Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, and the colon cancer part. The colon cancer thing was pretty much a done deal. My aunt just expressed all her wishes, which is the next bullet. She made a lot of decisions about things she wanted. She wanted to die at home. And my cousin and I, promised her that we would ensure that happened for her. And that goes to the last bullet, which says, plan the advocacy actions you want to take. So what that meant for my mom was, making sure she had a good neurologist, making sure that we understood, the progression of the disease. In my sister's case, that meant I went with my sister to LA and set her up to live with my niece because I couldn't take care of my mother and my sister at the same time. And so everything went into this plan of action. And as you work your way through this advocacy role, make sure you keep a record of how it's going. What do you need to do next? Is there a new drug you have to get, or you want to get her in this physical therapy session? Whatever it is, write it down, and you can always look back on that and see where you are in this plan of action. And I think that is a really key. So imagine my 2006 with, trying to manage those three things that are, really different. They had really different needs and all that. So there are other people that I know that are caring for more than one person. And so you have to be even more organized than we talked about in that first slide about, being the best advocate. Oh boy. So medical visits. Hasn't that been a chore in the time of COVID? Wow. I see Diane Davies, they're kind of smiling. They're like, yeah, this has been oh my God, I'm with you. I don't know the circumstances, but I can see y'all nodding and smiling. Wow. You can see two very nice people putting my mom in the little bus. The group home my mom lives in is called Life Springs Elder Care. And there are three homes in Prince George's County. They're about 3 miles from each other. My mom lives in one of the smaller homes, and they wanted, my mother broke some ribs, which you'll hear about in a little bit, and we needed a follow-up appointment to go all the way to Washington Hospital Center so they can do a follow-up x-ray. I was told that it would cost $400 to go from Temple Hills, Maryland to DC. Why? Because we are in the time of COVID. I was not paying. Do I have $400? Yes. Do I want to pay $400? No. And of course, you can't drive them, yourself. Anyway, the thing about being, organized and planned for all this stuff is to be really great at the schedule. So where it says schedule the appointment wisely, what does that mean? It means know the person you're advocating for. So my mother, not a morning girl. So when I was doing lots of appointments for her, I tried to do it between 10 and noon, because the other thing you need to be really cognizant of and wise about in Alzheimer's in particular is the later in the day that goes along, the more their behavior changes. It's also known as sundowning. So I don't want to schedule anything in the afternoon. So you want to think about that. You want to think about traffic. If your loved one is really antsy in the car for a long period of time, you certainly don't want to do anything on a Friday at 3 p.m. And so, make these things wisely, and also look at your calendar. You don't want to, it takes a long time to get some of these appointments. You don't want to get the appointment, then have to cancel it. So we want to be really careful about how we schedule. So the transportation issue, we talked about research that thankfully I started looking for transportation to get these x-rays for my mom at Washington Hospital Center. And I started well enough in advance to get the shock over, of the $400, but then to schedule with the owner, who was nice enough to let the activities director, since you're not doing the activities right now during COVID, let the activities director go with me. But also, in addition to having all of the paperwork that you need, the insurance card, Medicaid, whatever you need, have it. Every single document that my mother needs is on my phone. I have color copies of everything that I can email it right to them. They can print it out. I use all the portals of all these medical systems that have copies of all her latest everything, x-rays, that you can go right to the portal and get it. Make sure you have all of that, because referrals are no joke. You don't need to get to the place and don't have your referral. You just have to turn around and go back home. So please, please, please prepare. Last on the list there, it says, you want to ask questions and take notes. Now, one of the things that I used to do is sort of practice the night before, knowing what the visit was about. You want to list your questions related, to that. So they're going to get a new drug tomorrow. What is the drug? What is it going to do? How many times do I have to take it? Why this particular dosage? et cetera, and then take notes. One of the things I always do is ask the doctor, can I record the session? Most of them will say yes. A few will want to know why you do that, but sometimes you're not the only advocate. When you get home, the siblings, the other kids, they might want to know what the doctor said too. And you know how you tell one person something and you tell another person something else, you don't give them all the details. Well, you told Betty more than you told me. So play the recording. Everybody's happy. And so most of the time, but ask first. I don't try to, record anybody under the table, but they're pretty willing. And then what you're looking at on the screen at the bottom picture is one of our first virtual visits. My mom had a horrible summer of 2020. I thought sure she was going to leave us. She had 4 seizures and then a fall, which led to broken ribs. So we were having our little virtual visits. I was so happy to be in the same room with her that look at her walking, strolling along by herself. And so, I had all my questions in advance that I wanted to cover. Now, we talked about medical visits for the folks we're advocating for. Please look at this slide in terms of advocating for, our own medical visits. So you are your own best advocate. Remember that first slide, we talked about power. We have the power to get the best care possible for ourselves. So again, we want to look at our calendars, schedule strategically. So look at my calendar for January on the right. I had a doctor's appointment. I got blood work done. I had a bone scan. Then I went to work. I'm a DHS contractor for Homeland Security. So I went to work, had a meeting. Then I was on somebody's podcast show. The very next day, I had a mammogram. I try to do all my doctor visits for the year in January. So you can see that it's there. Now, one thing did not work out how I had intended. Like many people, I skipped some doctor's appointments in 2020, didn't we all? But so I got a little shock that my bone scan did not come out well because of all the surgeries I had. I've been in menopause for most of my life, 30 years. I had a hysterectomy when I was 27 years old. So osteoporosis has always been a concern. I did really well with it for years, especially when my sister was diagnosed with MS. I did 7 MS marathons for her, so my bones were in really good shape. But, it kind of fell off a little bit. I work out every day, but I haven't been doing the weights like I should. So I got a surprise in my bone scan. The osteoporosis is back, and now that's going to require really expensive medicine. So guess what I got in the mail this week? Well, my pharmacy has denied my drug. You can see on the left, it says I was supposed to be getting Prolia. The doctor had given me all kinds of information on that drug, but they denied it, as you can see. So it says, here are some alternatives that are covered. Do not just pick an alternative. There are 5 things on that list. How do I know? So please, please, please research that. Make some questions about each of these drugs. What are these drugs? And so I had already done all my research on the Prolia. And so, it has some really interesting side effects. What are these other side effects, these other things are going to have? So I have not picked anything yet. I just got this note this week. So I'm sharing, you're getting this live and in living color almost. And so I'm not going to pick anything until I talk to the doctor and, get his best thing. He did, in fact, allude to the fact that it might be denied, and it certainly was. And it says they've been nice enough to send it to my doctor as well. How nice of them. And so, we'll figure it out. But, ask questions, don't just, some people, who are caring for others, and I have a friend who's caring for both parents. They would just pick one right now because they don't have time to worry about themselves. But that could be a mistake. Get one of your other siblings or a church friend or somebody to, help with that while you work through this issue, because, you cannot, like they say on the airplanes, you cannot, care for others until you have your own oxygen mask on. So I need to resolve that before I do other things. So please keep that in mind. So you got to see Loretta's whole health thing too. Oh boy, this is a tough slide for me because we've experienced quite a few things that I would rather not have experienced. So before we started talking about the power, I had to, don't be afraid to fire the doctor at the bottom of the slide. I moved it to the top because you got to not be afraid to fire somebody. And I became quite good at that. And one of the things that was key for me, and I think really changed the trajectory of my mom's diagnosis. We went to the doctor in 2006 to, go through the testing you do in the office for Alzheimer's. You have to draw a clock. They ask you who the president is, what season it is, all that stuff. And of course, my mother can't answer any of these questions. So, he says, well, you are in the beginning stages of dementia. And my mother looks instantly terrified. And the one thing I noticed about the doctor is his bedside manner. If you're looking at the list there, his bedside manner was horrible. When he walked into the room, the look on his face was like the last place he wanted to be was in this room with us. Okay. So, my mother's kind of hysterical. He doesn't address at all her reaction. Oh, that's bad, right? Now I'm trying to, calm her down. I'm holding her hand, and he's just moving on. He's writing out a prescription, and he hasn't even said anything other than you are in the beginning stages of dementia. So he writes us a prescription for Aricept, doesn't explain what it is. I know what it is, but he doesn't explain it. And my mother says, she takes one drug. So she says, I don't want to take anything else. And I said, you don't have to take it if you don't want to. And he snaps back. She does if you want her to remember you. Really? So I'm, so he pushes the prescription even closer to me, and I'm leaving it right on the desk. So I'm still trying to work with her, and she's still, not happy about, taking it. And he finally says, that's what's wrong with you people. You don't want help. You just want to complain. I'm going to let that sink in for a minute. Trust me when I tell you, we got our purse, our coats, and we just walked right out. I took the little prescription, but didn't have any, didn't have any plan of her actually taking it. And I kept playing that in my head. That's what's wrong with you people. You'll see at the end of this, it became the lead sentence in an article Mom and I were in Psychology Today magazine. That's how big this story got to be. And wow, I don't want anybody to go through that. So the woman smiling at the top, with picture with my mom, that was Dr. Curver. She was fabulous. She was in the same neurology practice with the other guy we won't name. But when I even called to, when I fired him in essence, and I called to, get another person, even the scheduler said, you're going to like her a whole lot better. Yes, indeed. And soon she walked in, she said, hi. And then she was so polite. She like, can I ask your daughter some questions? Yes. Oh, give her a hand. And now we had 6 glorious years with her. Then she met some man and decided she was going to move to Denver. Isn't there a man in DC you can be with? I tried to buy somebody in DC to be with her, but she wasn't having it. She moved anyway. And I was just hysterical. I asked any of my friends. I cried and cried when she left. There was no replacing her until we find the best GP ever. That's Dr. Adoko in the bottom. Doesn't she just look friendly? Look at that face. Oh my gosh. She, they just both had the same, just loving and tender, you get a hug and all that stuff before COVID, of course. But my mom's nonverbal, she wasn't great at saying, her feelings. But when that doctor that we fired walked in, just her whole body language changed. She kind of slumped down, and she'd been going to him, for about 6 months before I was like, let me take off from work and go. I don't know what's going on here. I told my sister, I said, I think something's going on. I'm going to go and see. And so that's how this whole thing started. But remember, we're making these selections based on what's best for them. So when I'm watching my mother crouch down like she's afraid of somebody, I'm never coming back to you. So you can just put that in. And, I am thrilled with that decision. I've fired a couple more doctors since then. And so, you have to exercise that power. This is your mother or your spouse or whatever. But look at those. Find that happy face like Dr. Adoko. And she is really just a hoot. Okay, think emergencies for a minute. None of us want to think about them, but they occur. And so if you Google emergency checklists, there are lots of them for like evacuations. FEMA has some, but just general state checklists for if you have to evacuate. So at Mom's group home, everybody has a go bag. It has their name on it. It has changes of clothes. It has every procedure. So, if you get the notice that you're going to have to evacuate in an hour and you running around to the medicine kit and getting all this stuff and you forget the Tuesday pill, please have extra an additional bottle or pill organizer with, just the emergency dosage in it. And, we've had, look at way before COVID, look at all of the natural disasters we have had in spades over the last 3 years or so, just monumental stuff. And so whether it's a disaster or some unexpected trip to the hospital, which we had several times with mom, I mean, we still haven't gotten to the bottom of the seizures as of yet. But as horrible as some of these experiences can be, we really have to do the self-talk and keep ourselves calm and positive. And we can cry, but we still have to be focused on our patients. So when mom started having these seizures, it scared me to death. She has an ironclad DNR. And so, the second seizure was 10 minutes long, and it was the scariest thing ever. So we just have to be really cognizant of our emotions, but also focused. Woo, so these hospital admissions during COVID, do I need to say any more about that? Holy cow. So the toughest part about mom's latest hospitalizations were because they all did occur during COVID. So it was really important for me to be able to reach. I live a mile from Southern Maryland Hospital. I have walked it on a good day, and my mom lives not quite 3 miles from there. So, you can't go over there. So you talk to anybody that you can. And I have all her medical history on my phone. As I said, I can, shoot you an email or whatever else. The second seizure got everybody's attention. They did ask me to run over with the DNR, which I did. They snatched it out of my hand in the emergency room and ran in the other direction. And while I was still asking, can I see her for a second, the lady was gone. And so we just have to make sure we stay on top of, whatever the risks are, to make sure that no medical errors done. We had the most interesting of medical errors in the sense that in this past January, she had her fourth seizure just a few weeks ago. And they called twice to say my mother was being admitted, once in the afternoon and once at midnight. They went through the same intake procedures with me both times, except I probably was not too coherent for the midnight version of it. But that seemingly interesting thing of the difference in when she supposedly was admitted turned out to be interesting the next day when I called to check on her, and they said she was not there. In other words, they lost my mama. And so that's the last thing you want, is for your mother to go missing. I'll tell you how I dealt with that in just a little bit. But we have to make sure through this whole process, the person that we're caring for, that their wishes are respected. I had a little issue with the midnight person who kept trying to tell my mother that I was her daughter. My mother has not known me since 2014. She calls me very nice person. I'm good with that. I have a problem when people keep saying, and my mother kept saying, I don't know. She kept saying, this is your daughter. Say hello. Please don't do that. And so, it was hard, trying to advocate for her. I wanted to just hang up on the woman, but, of course I couldn't do that. But making sure that, everything is protected. The picture on the right is of us meeting with Dr. Adoko after that discharge in January. And so we're doing the virtual visit, of course. But she spent 40 minutes of us looking at every medicine and, just trying to get to why does she keep having these seizures. And the scary thing about it is she had just taken her anti-seizure medicine 10 minutes before she had her fourth seizure. So so she got admitted because of that. And they were very concerned about what to do. So the follow-up care, we have to make sure we really understand. And, so what they did in my mother's case was increase the seizure medicine doses. That's a concern as well, because then they just sleep a lot. So, you got to weigh everything in terms of that. So get every schedule if they're going to have physical therapy or any of those things. And what's really hard to do during COVID is you're not there with them looking at the discharge paper. They throw all the paperwork in the ambulance and then they ride off. And then when they get to the group home, you're missing something. So twice when she was admitted to the hospital, I had to go back to get other stuff. And so make sure you have everything that you need before you leave. And I know how hard that is, because hospital admissions are just scary, depending on what your situations are. So communicating as an advocate can be tough. I insist on a couple of things. One, I want people to respect my mother. So I insist everybody calls her by her name, which is Doris, not honey, sweetie pie, none of that, all these pet names. Her name is Doris. Please call her Doris. And so I'm pretty focused on that. I watch their nonverbal cues and my mother's as I described. I'm listening to every word that you say. I'm taking notes, even though I'm usually always recording. Because what that does for me, honestly, is it allows me to have patience. I'm going to write down, and as I'm writing, I'm processing what you're saying. And that picture that you're looking at, people always say that I'm a fabulous communicator with my mother, because I have to get down, look right in her eyes. And that picture was taken by a Washington Post photographer. And she says, wow, when you look right at your mom, she comes right back to life. And that is true. That blank stare goes away. And she'll say, hi. And she knows, she doesn't know my name, but of course, she recognizes my face. And so I want everybody, you can't insist everybody take that much time, but I do want them to at least, acknowledge that she's in the room, she's sitting right here. And especially early on in after her diagnosis, she could still contribute a lot. Don't ignore her like she's not sitting right here. And so that's always, I think, a key for us as well. Now, this is one of my favorite segments. When they don't live with you, that's when you really need to be an advocate. Now, remember, it was not my choice that my mother doesn't live with me. My husband would have loved it if she had lived with us. He absolutely worshiped my mom. So let's be aware of the rights that they have when they're in a residential place. This was after one of the trips to the doctor, and they're taking her in. They love my mother as much as me. That is for sure. But I still pay attention to what her rights are. So whatever information you need, make sure you get it. They call me about everything. I'll go over there and I'll look through the door to see what's happening and the window. And they even built, the owner built a huge deck on the back of the house when COVID first hit, so that 4 or 5 families could do the outdoor visits together. I just applaud her. She put iPads in every house so that if your loved one didn't have a phone, they could still do FaceTime. I mean, this woman is spectacular in terms of ownership. That said, if you have complaints, please voice them. Write down the date that you made the complaint, the time, what the complaint was about, and who you talked to, because then when there's a big issue, oh, I don't remember having that conversation. Don't try it. So write it all down. The dignity and respect I talked about, they do it better at this particular group home than I've ever seen. They don't talk about other residents with other patients' families. It is strictly, need to know. So, we had a medical emergency here, so we're going to have to cut our chat short or whatever it was. But they don't give you any details, and nor should they. Thankfully, my mother's not allowed to have, money or anything like that. But in places where they do have that, make sure all their possessions are stored securely. How they do it there, I supply all of the toiletries. They lock everything up. You sign it in, what you bought, what the ounces were, how many things of toothpaste or deodorant or whatever you bought is, and it's all logged in. So they can't use the body wash you bought for your mother on someone else. So it's as cool as it can be. I've seen several situations in some of the groups, in some of the support groups I belong to, where the family has insisted that we don't like this place, we're going to move you. You have every right. And you saw a lot of that on Facebook during COVID, where family members wanted to go and rescue their loved one from the nursing home or wherever, and there was a lot of that. You have every right to do that. Here's my favorite. Here's my favorite thing when it says, be wary of facilities that require that you call before you visit. That's code for they're gonna get them all cleaned up before you get there. And so I hate that. I'm never gonna call you first. And so I work 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. purposely, so that in the afternoon, I was always at my mom's. I was there every day. So this lockdown has almost killed me. And when I was driving downtown, of course, everybody's working at home, but when I was driving to downtown DC to work, I would show up at the group home some mornings at 5 a.m. on my way to work to help get them up really early there, because half of them used to go to adult day. And now I guess in Prince George's County, they're getting ready to start adult day back up again. So they get them up really early there to do breakfast and all that. So I would go and help get my mom in the shower and get her dressed, stuff like that. So I was a very hands-on participant. You don't have to be that to be an advocate, but you certainly can. The thing I really want you to be aware of is the thing, if you have any fear of them being abused or anything, please speak up. The instance where my mom broke her ribs occurred when she was, they have these lifts in the group home. So she got out of the lift and was walking forward. The story I got was because of the seizures, her legs were really weak. And so she started to fall forward. The caregiver supposedly grabbed her from behind and to keep her from falling on the floor, and she hit her shoulder on the wall. Okay, that was the story I was given. Well, come to find out, it probably was not the full story. I don't think they hit her at all. But when we investigated, we found out there was more to the story, which I'll share with you in a minute. So I have been to that house on all shifts, and some caregivers, as in any case, are better than others, but they all are what we call good enough. So I'll continue that story about what goes wrong. So this first one is easier said than done. You have to choose your battle without overreacting. So in the story of my mom falling, if you look at that picture, and I have a little yellow circle in the middle, it's a little bit hard to see, but my mother had a almost baseball-sized knot in the middle of her chest that showed up 2 days after she fell. I took her to patient first as I was requested to get x-rays on what I was told she hit, which was her shoulder. 2 days later, we were going to take her to an ortho appointment because 2 days after I took her to patient first, the radiologist called to say, oh, you have to rush her to an orthopedic person because her clavicle is broken. What? So as we're trying to process and get that done, she starts to have trouble breathing. I thought, sure, she had COVID. So we're sitting there discussing, we're not going to take her to this ortho appointment. We're going to call 911 because this huge knot, it was indicative of something being broken to me. And that's exactly what it was. Her clavicle had started to move a little bit in that 2 days. She no longer feels pain, apparently. So she's not yelling or screaming or uncomfortable, but now she's having trouble breathing. So we call 911 instead. And now I'm a little stressed about the situation because when they get her to Southern Maryland, they tell me, oh, this situation is over our head. She has 4 very badly broken ribs, and we have to transfer her first they told me they were going to fly her to Washington Hospital Center, which really scared me. And now I'm upset. How did her ribs get broken and all this stuff? But I'm not gonna yell and scream and do any of that. But I want to get closer to the truth. The lead caregiver, who I love with all my heart, his name is Janet. She also was a little leery of what happened. And again, I don't think anybody punched her or did anything. I think she hit the floor, and the person who was monitoring her was on her cell phone, which she is a lot. And so we think that's what happened. But I got every name and date and all of that. And it's easy to, when things like that happen, or when she escaped. My mother was a great escape artist a few years ago. She got out not once, not twice, but 3 times. So I had to put a GPS in her shoe. Now, the second time she got lost, she was gone for a while. She went across all 4 lanes of Highway 210. If you're familiar with 210, you know how many people get killed every year there. But again, I didn't yell and scream or do anything because when I got there, everybody was crying, which means no matter what word I chose to share with them, I couldn't make them feel any worse than they already did. So I chalked that up to, okay. But I think we have to weigh these things because you have to remember, you can curse everybody out and do all these kinds of things, but she still has to live there. So, you have to really weigh that. So I've been really good at not overreacting. So when they lost my mom in Southern Maryland, in the January hospital admission, and they told me my mother was not there, and I knew she was not at the group home, I grabbed my keys and my sweater. I got on my pajamas now, but I'm pretending I'm going out. So I rushed to my door like I'm really gonna go over there and find my mother. And then I say to myself, stop yourself. So I sat down for a minute, put the keys down. I called right back to Southern Maryland, and I talked to the same woman who told me my mother was not there. And I said, hi, I just talked to you a couple minutes ago. Is there a supervisor I can talk to? Because I'm sure my mom's there somewhere. She said, sure, hold on. So I didn't say you're an idiot. I didn't say any of the things. I think my mama is there. You go find her right now. The supervisor comes on. She says, I will call you right back. And she spent time with us. She made me feel good. I was so glad I did not try to run over there in my pajamas, which of course only would have led to me being arrested, I'm sure, because nobody can go in. So, whether you need to count to 10, whether you need to, phone a friend, whatever it is, they will always get to the bottom of, what went wrong. But when we, overreact at times, even though it may not seem that way at the time, ask yourself, what is the best way to sort of advocate, for our person so that we're not in a situation where we were going to regret it later. What we decided, the doctors and I decided, was that just the way the ribs were broken. Again, I was pretty sure, nobody had hit her or anything like that, but they were all in agreement. Dr. Adoko in particular says, I have looked at the x-rays. There's no way she, sort of fell into a wall. She hit the floor at some point. So we were all pretty much in agreement with that. And there was no arguing that. If I felt there were anything more to it, I certainly could get an elder care attorney in that case. And the only thing I'll say about attorneys at this point, and you all might have questions later, the only contact I've had with an elder care attorney, which is a really good example of me being the best advocate for her that I can be, is I only had one sibling. And so my sister died from MS in 2011. And, you make that horrible decision of not telling your mother. So I never told my mother my sister died, just left it at that. She has never asked about my sister. And so then the team of advocates for my mother were me and my husband. And then 5 years ago, this July, my husband died suddenly while we were on vacation in New York. That leaves me as my mother's only hope. So an elder care attorney advised me to put my house in a trust in my mother's name. That way, if I got COVID, or this was way before COVID, but if I got COVID, I got hit by a bus or whatever, my mother would be cared for. Now I mentioned I have a stepdaughter, but my stepdaughter loves to, she was the beneficiary for everything, and my granddaughter. But if it came down to it, my daughter would be at the mall and my mother would be homeless. So what happens now is my house would be sold, my mother's care would be paid for, and then whatever was left after my mother died would go to my daughter and granddaughter. So I would never have known that had this attorney not brought that up. So part of being an advocate, of course, is consulting that. So I didn't have to consult an attorney for anything somebody did wrong, but certainly since I am my mother's only hope at this point, that we could do that. So I've had other people help me with my advocacy. If I travel, as Robin mentioned, I travel all over the country doing these speeches and advocating and talking about dementia and caregiving. And so I've done that a lot. So other people have stepped in and kind of helped me with that. But there, aside from that, there's some of the best elder care attorneys around in the state of Maryland. That is for sure. There are some awesome ones out there if you ever, need one. And my advice to be, find one before you're mad. Have somebody in mind that, who might be helpful to you before you actually need one. Because, when you're mad or whatever, you don't have time to really do research and focus on who might be the best person for your family. So that's what I want to say about that. You can use an outside agency to look at things. And one really good example of that is an ombudsman. If you don't know what an ombudsman is, they are, it's a free service, first of all, let me say that, but also they are some of the best advocates, and their primary focus is nursing homes and long-term care, assisted living places. And for folks who don't have anybody to speak for them, an ombudsman would step in and take care of whatever complaints have been lodged. And there have been a lot of ombudsmen around in this COVID situation, that is for sure. It has a little link down there if you think you need an ombudsman, and everybody needs them. And then How we learned about Ombudsman was a horrible situation. My favorite cousin and my aunt, my mother's second sibling, was in a nursing home. And her roommate has 7 kids, but they never came. And nursing homes, sometimes the treatment is based on how many times people show up. So this woman, my aunt's roommate, falls on the floor. They come in, they pick her up, they put her back in the bed. My cousin and I are there, and she starts moaning almost right away. My cousin pushes the button, and they come, they look, and they don't call 911. They do nothing. This goes on for days. On the 3rd day, my cousin goes out to the nursing station. She asks to speak to the manager, whatever. And she says, listen, this woman has been yelling, screaming, whatever. And she wasn't screaming, but she was moaning loudly for days. If you do not call someone today, I'm going to call somebody from the state. Well, of course, now, woohoo, they're going to run around. They call 911. They come. Of course, you know, she gets to the hospital. Her hip is broken and she dies. When she dies, her 7 kids show up. They fall on the floor. They cry. They yell and scream. And I hadn't seen any of these children ever. And they were known to not visit. Yet now they're going to sue everybody and do all these kinds of things. And that situation impacted my cousin and I so deeply. My cousin signed up. I mean, we went to her funeral. We signed up. She signed up the next week or so to become an ombudsman. And she has been an ombudsman in Montgomery County for, probably 13 years now. And just a horrible situation that certainly could have been avoided. And that situation was not the only one in this particular nursing home. And so the ombudsman had been there before and worked through things. And their goal, of course, is to work through a situation that will help families, worry less. I mean, when you're an advocate, you really want to be aware of what all of the rights are, but you don't know everything. So an ombudsman can step in and make that process, a lot more smooth there, because we don't know all the rules and regulations of nursing homes. Lots of advocates have learned them during COVID. What are their rights in terms of being able to see their loved ones and that kind of thing. So I mentioned a little bit about elder abuse. If you suspect it, don't ignore it. There's I love the National Center on Elder Abuse. There's a website there. You can call your local government and get help as well. I have had a woman in a support group that I moderate who lives in Canada. Her father had abused her as a child, but then forgot that and then expected this child to take care of her, which she was trying to do. He was always mean, even when she was a child, and he was even meaner as an adult. She called 911 on herself and said, I'm about to hurt him. Please come and get him. I applaud her for doing that. They did come. They got him. They took him wherever. And I am proud that she, had the wherewithal to do that before she did something that might have sent her to jail. And he did not go to jail for abusing her when she was a kid, but she avoided that entire situation. I was very proud of that. So look at that. With 4 minutes to go, what I want to close with in terms of being the best advocate you can be is, first of all, taking care of yourself. Don't neglect yourself and your doctor's appointments and all that. I'll let you know how the drug thing works out for me. But please care for yourself first so that you can be the best advocate you can be. So I leave you with these 4 things. Be present at every appointment, at every consultation, at every physical therapy thing that you can go to. My mother was in the midst of her treatment after her seizures. She was given 18 appointments with a physical therapist to help strengthen her legs. They tried to quit at appointment number 9, called me to say they weren't coming back because she has dementia and can't follow any directions. And so they weren't going to come back. She wasn't going to get any stronger. Oh, no, you will not quit on my mother. Well, she's not going to get it. Are you getting paid? I said that in the nicest of way. You're getting paid for 18. Please give my mother her 18. And now look, she can walk all over the place now. Don't give up on our people. That's just not cool. So she didn't like me. I said it in a very nice way. She didn't like, but she came back for the rest of the night, the 18 appointments. I can tell you that. And she begrudgingly called me on the 18th time. We're done. and she is a little stronger. Oh, what'd you say? She's stronger? The thing you said she could not do. Okay, great. Great. So anyway, speak up and be honest. People I have known, I'm a keeping it real kind of girl, and I am known for that. And you really, really want to be vigilant. And that article I mentioned about the doctor saying that's what's wrong with you people. You don't want to, help. You just want to complain. There's that Psychology Today article with me and mom. And that thing, as I said, went a lot of places. I got a lot of interviews behind that article. I'm very proud of it in the sense that we have said, I think, for a long time, that there are a lot of situations, my story from the 1980s certainly holds to that as well, that sometimes if you don't speak up for yourself, you don't get the same treatment as everyone else. So we just have to pay a lot of attention to that and make sure we're, and not in a demanding way, but keep asking those questions and ensure that you are being the best advocate you can be. So at 58 minutes and 38 seconds, we are there. So we are happy to answer questions for you. I can't thank you enough for being a great advocate already by coming out to this and hopefully getting some things that you can take back to others or sharing this video with other folks, because really our loved ones deserve the best care they can get. So whatever we can do to get that for them, we should try. So thank you all so much for being with us and staying on with us as we now take on questions. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Ms. Loretta. We so far have one question in the chat. So we welcome others to join in and put their questions there in the chat. So we have one comment and question. So the comment, great best practices for hospital admissions list. But my experience, hospitals do their best not to listen to you or recognize that you have legal guardian status for health decisions and advocacy. Do you have any suggestions on what to do in that situation?
So I've been through that a couple of times. I always ask if I can speak to, an administrator. I do have a social worker as well. My mom is on they call the Maryland waiver program, and you get a social worker with that. So I've had some success with some of the social workers talking to the hospital personnel, especially if my mother was there more than just a day or two. I mean, if it's only there a day or overnight, which has been most of my mom's time, but there were a couple of times she was there a week with the ribs and other things, and they were very good in those cases. But I have had to ask my social worker to talk to some of the hospital staff, and then you notice that when people call you back, somebody has talked to them. But I've talked to a couple of hospital administrators as well. People say, well, if you have any questions or whatever, please call us. And the woman who actually found my mother when she was technically lost at Southern Maryland in January, she was very nice about it. And she said she appreciated my attitude. I forget what her title was, but it was something about a manager of the emergency room or something. She wasn't a doctor. She was clearly some sort of administrator. And, she did try to help me, and she did call me back. So I was very impressed with her. I wrote a letter about, how she helped, and she jumped right in, to the situation. But I think you just have to ask a lot of times, or ask to speak to someone else until you get help. When they get sick of hearing from you, that's usually when they will turn around and help. That's probably been a lot more difficult with COVID, because all hands on deck, people who are, non-healthcare providers have been doing a lot of the work at the hospitals as well. So this is a different time that probably none of us, obviously have been through before, and it's a little different. But I would just keep insisting, and when they get sick enough of us, most of the time they do respond before we get ugly. So.
Liz, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm the patient advocate at Calvert Health Medical Center. So, when you're having a difficulty, as that question presented, knowing that you can call the advocate, me, I can help with whatever issues you have. Especially right now, as Loretta said, people can't be in the hospital, although we did open this week from 2 to 6. Yeah, yay, it's awesome. Very happy about that. But before that, you know, you didn't know what was going on. And I like to be the eyes and ears for everybody on the outside who can't be here for their loved ones. So I'm the one who can talk to the doctor. I can talk to the nurse. I can talk to the tech. I can talk to the PT, OT people. I can help advocate for whatever you need. If you're having difficulties explaining to the provider that you are the caretaker for this individual, first of all, we always ask for papers, POA papers, medical power of attorney papers. And if we have that on file, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be spoken to. So it's happening. Again, I can step in. I can make sure that it does happen. I can help alleviate some of those. You know, you've got enough going on worrying about a loved one that's in the hospital. You don't need to worry about that. You know, and I always tell everybody, all right, it's off of you now. It's on me. Put it on my shoulders. I'll take care of it. You just sit back. I'll get back to you immediately. So
I love you already.
You know, and it's not just the advocates of the patient, but the patient themselves. When you find yourself, my information is in every room of the hospital.
Oh, wow.
My number. Oh yeah. My number is on we have a list of important phone numbers. Food and nutrition is one of them. Most popular, but then me. But everybody wants their food in the hospital.
That's right.
And I also have volunteers. I have a set of volunteers who go before I go to do rounds. They go do rounds on all the new patients, and they give a brochure to every new patient to let them know, hey, you have an advocate if you should need one. So we do try to get that word out to everybody that I'm here. I think most people know that by now, that I'm a pretty big pit bull for the patients. So, you know, that's an avenue you can go to. And I think most hospitals have advocates now, you know, so it's not just at Calvert.
That's awesome. Really awesome.
So Loretta, you're getting a lot of comments about what a wonderful presentation that you gave. Someone asked, are your PowerPoint slides available for attendees? And Robin did put a link in the chat that they are available. Let's see. Excellent presentation. Everybody's very thankful.
Can I ask a quick question about the group home and how hard it was to find one you're happy with? Like basically, how do you balance the need between needing a placement quick, but finding a good place?
Okay, that's a great question. So this is my mother's second group home. So we had, please don't do what I did. I had not put my mother on a list for financial resources when she was first diagnosed. And I waited till 2009 trying to get her in the Maryland waiver, you know, stay in your community program thing. And that 3-year wait meant that there were 23,800 people in front of us. And so I was paying $1,500 a month for my mom's care. And that was cool when my husband was here. We had 2 incomes. And so doing that by myself, but you know, I'd do anything for her. Just to be honest, I wrote my books to pay for my mother's care and all the speaking fees that go to my mother's care. So finally, in 2018, our name gets to the top of the list after the 8 years and 6 months. And you get a whole list of the participants in this waiver program from the state of Maryland in Baltimore. It has the entire state, and then you go to Prince George's County or Calvert County or wherever, and you look at all the group homes available. They give you 10 days to run around and find a place. Now, the first group home, she wasn't in the thing. My husband and I, you know, divided up these group homes and went to see them. And the first one I had, Mamie's Loving Care, was, you know, recommended to me by somebody else, and it was fabulous. And they say when you have the moderate to late stage dementia, the last thing you want to do is move a person. But I had to decide, am I going to continue to pay $1,500 a month or more, and I would have to work until my mother died, or risk it and move her. So the letter was scary that I got from Baltimore, because it said you had literally 10 days, and not thank you for waiting 8 years, but you have 10 days. I waited 8 years, but you get 10 days to go find a place. So and I don't have anybody to do the group homes with me. So I run around, and I wanted to be a little closer to here. So this one is 3 miles away. And I mean, I don't know if you could tell some of the pictures that the house is immaculate, hardwood floors. The thing is gorgeous, and they all average. There's 6 other people in the group home with my mom. The rooms are beautiful. I mean, the housekeeping, there's no smell. I mean, it is exquisite. I don't know how I struck gold twice, but I actually did. But you have to just, like the best practices sort of said, I went, once I decided that I wanted this particular program, Life Springs Elder Care, I did go. She allowed me to go. The owner allowed me to go. It's a husband and wife. I went the different shifts and everything. I did everything is said on there. I talked to the different people. I looked at they have books for every resident of, health records, yada, yada, and flu shots, all that, everything is listed. So I looked at the go bags. I looked at, in every closet, the showers. I mean, they allowed me to do anything. So I tried to make the best of that 10, days that I had to decide. And I did it, but it was a hard decision because I had no idea what was going to happen with it. I don't know how I got so lucky twice. But I think the owners, I did talk to all of the owners. I only visited 5 places, but they're all really honest about their strengths and weaknesses, if you will. And one guy was planning on doing the house was not in as good a shape as you would have liked. There were some areas in the floor where there could have been a slip and fall kind of thing. And he showed some paperwork that he was in the process of getting a contractor to fix that. I wasn't willing to risk it, but I appreciated his honesty. I really did. And he was aware his house was not top notch, but so I didn't have any problem with anybody deceiving, anyone or anything with what they could offer and what they could not. I love the fact that they have their own activity bus and the activity director that goes between the houses, keeping my mom engaged. AARP named me the entertainment director because I'm always looking for some kind of activities for my mom, and I welcome that title. And so to actually get her in a place, had their own bus the other day, Wednesday, they went to National Harbor. Nobody gets on the bus, nobody gets off the bus. They pack a lunch, they go, they park, and they overlook the Potomac. They have their lunch and cookies. They turn around and go back. And that's a beautiful thing. Who does that? It's awesome. And so, and I have that GPS in her shoe, so they have to call me first and say they leave it because my phone will just go crazy when she crosses the threshold. So I don't know. I thank God every day that I found this place. It's a miracle that you luck out. Or twice I haven't had one complaint. And like I said, even the time my mother got out there, it was just a comedy of errors. It was an open house day, and then Miss Hutchinson was nice enough to take in a woman who had gotten put out of another group home for punching the resident. She was nice enough to take this woman in. So Janet, the primary caregiver, who's a nurse, was checking her in. My mother at 1 minute was sitting at the table. There's a picture of her sitting there. And then the next minute she walked out with another family who was touring the place. That could happen to anybody. I didn't go yell and scream and did anything. They were all crying. The other caregivers came on their day off to help look for mom and all that. And so, it was just an accident and she was fine. And so, I think all of those things go into consideration. But I love the fact that all of the waiver group home book is probably 60 some pages it only has 4 lines about each place, the website, the address, yada, who owns it, yada, yada. And then you're on your own to find a place. You fill out paperwork every year about their financial offerings. They can't, you can only have a certain amount of money and that kind of thing, but you do the same paperwork every year and they approve you every year to stay in the program. But she's done quite well. And that program got us the social worker and all that. And so she's helped us with a lot of things as well. So I've just been really lucky all the way around.
Loretta, do you have any recommendations for people who have to advocate from a distance when a family member lives too far away to get to their loved one quickly? Are there different state rules, for instance?
Yeah, and the only state I really know is Maryland. That can be tough. However, you just have to get a friend in the state where your loved one is. Like Liz was saying, I think the first calls I would be making would be to the local, just like, Calvert County, because sometimes the state agency just speaks for the state, but your counties have rules too. So if it was, the person lives in Calvert County, I would call Calvert County first and see what suggestions they had, somebody to get you some help, somebody that is going to call you back in New Jersey or California or wherever you are. There are probably a third of the caregivers in most of the groups that I work with. I moderate 2 different caregiver support groups and belong to a couple more. And I do a ton of work with Johns Hopkins Medicine. They have about 20 different support groups. And their advice always is, find somebody local that can be your eyes and ears and, be friends with them. I've had people send gift baskets and other things to show appreciation of that person who's acting on their behalf. Make a friend. And that's the fastest way to get it done. In my sister's case, one of the things that was interesting was my niece couldn't bring herself to visit much after my sister lost almost all of her, physical capabilities. My niece just couldn't look at her that way. I flew out a couple of times to correct some issues that were there. And then while I was there in LA, I got the names of lots of people who said, don't fly out here anymore. You call me and I'll do that. But it was a situation where my sister had a roommate who clearly didn't like African Americans, kept calling her the N-word and throwing things, shoes and things at my sister. And my sister no longer could roll into bed and duck it. And so when I called, the person said, well, you're overreacting. And that the woman grew up in the time when the N-word was acceptable. And so I should just be okay with it. I was not, so I had to fly all the way out there and kind of deal with that. And so I never had to go out again and do that. I made friends while I was there a week. I met with lots of people and then got all the numbers and things that I needed to be my sister's advocate from afar. And it worked incredibly well. And I had no second, guessing, no second thought, whatever, about befriending these folks and trusting with all my heart that they had my sister's best interests at heart. And they didn't have to be scared that I was going to get on a plane and come back. And so I think sometimes you just luck into these people, but I think you have so much more effectiveness if you go that one time, get all the stuff done that you can get, then fly back knowing you have laid the groundwork and set up a plan to be effective.
See, we have a kind of multiple questions. This is for Loretta and Dr. Folsom. Is there a way to connect the different patient portals?
I wish.
From different doctors, so that different doctors can see tests that are already done? And do you recommend having one doctor, if so, which specific type of doctor, to be that patient's main doctor?
Dr. Folsom, I'm gonna let you start.
Yeah, so it's a great question. Thus far, there really isn't a whole lot of portal communication. I do know that in the state of Maryland, CRISP, which is a centralized regional database, which was initially created for monitoring drug practices and refills and such, and a variety of other things. There is a lot of work being done to try to centralize if you're hospitalized in one hospital and then another one, that your doctor, if they're signed up with CRISP, that they can see certain aspects of that visit. Mm-hmm. But it certainly will not include everything. Most providers, and I give a little bit of background to the participants, I saw patients here locally in Calvert from about 2008 until last year during the pandemic, 2020, when I sort of switched gears and went into public health. But during that time, I learned a lot of things could be done in the doctor's office that would really help facilitate communication. So making sure when you go visit your doctor, get a printout. If you've had a CAT scan done, if you've had blood work done, get a copy and make sure that you have it. If I saw medically complex people, I really asked them to get a binder. And if they had multiple medical issues or they were seeing multiple specialists, put things in there. And so thus far, there's really not integration of multiple portals at this point that I know of. To answer your question about the medical providers, in general, most people will have a family doctor or an internal medicine provider that they see for their care. And that person is, I used to say that I'm kind of the umbrella holder, that there's maybe a lot of spokes out there that you might be seeing an OBGYN even can serve as a primary care provider for many women. But still there are complex things that might have to be sort of brought back to a primary care person's care. So in general, most people will seek an internal medicine or a primary care physician. If you need resources for helping to find someone that can be a provider, or if you're maybe lacking in terms of insurance knowledge or things like that, both the Office of Aging can help. The health department has people who are literally dedicated to a couple things: securing insurance for our population and helping with transportation needs. And I know that the Office of Aging and Community Outreach are also sort of involved in that. So that's a little bit, that's my takeaway point from that perspective. But really, it's important for you to have copies of if you've had a test done, that's your record, and you should be entitled to getting a copy of that. And if you have a power of attorney or someone who can help with medical decision making, that person should also, probably have a copy of that for their records. And then they can take it to a specialist. I'll just sort of give a little bit of background also on being an advocate. My mom has had cancer twice of the oral cavity. She underwent a first surgery many, many years ago, over 10 years ago, and then unfortunately had a recurrence. And during that process of the second surgery required a trach, a lot of, a feeding tube, many, many special things there. And, I learned very, very quickly how in, my practice as an outpatient provider, that's not necessarily how things were happening in the hospital. So it's also important to let people know, as Liz mentioned, if there's a health advocate at the hospital, if you can talk to your family members' care provider team at the hospital. Now, this is a little tricky. I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial. Many times the residents and the intern medicine doctors, the ones that are sort of learning, are seeing your loved ones on a more frequent basis at some of these higher level facilities. They're actually seeing your loved ones, 2, 3, 4 times a day. When I was in training, we'd go in the morning, we'd go in at midday, we'd go in the afternoon. The attendings may not be seeing them as frequently, but they are getting the reports from the people that are in training. So it's really important that if you're really having a difficult time, ask to speak to the attending, ask to speak to the person that's in charge of their medical care, the surgeon that's in charge. If you have real concerns and you feel like they're not being heard, that's another stepwise approach that you might need to undertake, especially at large institutions where they have residency programs and fellowships. So just make sure that your voice is heard about those concerns that you might have. And then I'll let Loretta speak to any other things she might know about for those different rules things. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to echo the idea about having the notebook. If you Google caregiver notebook, you get all kinds of things. And so, just go to Walmart and get a binder and, start to just photocopy everything. I have huge versions of it. And some of the ones you can actually download for free have just the different categories, because we can't think of everything that should be in the notebook. So there's one I love. I'll put it in the chat, called Springwell, which is kind of cool. Springwell. And if you caregiver notebook, and it does help take away the frustration of not having all the portals talk together. I can't agree more with the my mom's GP, Dr. Adoko. She is the focal point for all the stuff. She will call another doctor in a minute and get the report sent over and that kind of thing. So she's been the sort of gatekeeper to the portal. She's at National Harbor, so we go there, and so she, if she needs to see what tests they did at the hospital, where the Southern Maryland records from when she was there in January. So that whole 40 minutes we were on with her. She called some people. She did all that stuff. The whole 40 minutes, we were there. I cannot even put into words how much I love this woman. And so that she has taken that on. I didn't run around and do anything. And one of the things that is challenging is that anytime they go out of the group home and go to a hospital and come back, whatever medicines they added now has to go on her plan, and and so they can't give her anything if it's not on the plan. Lord, that plan is going to be the death of me, because her thyroid person gave her prescription. You take 75 milligrams 3 days a week, and the other 4 you take 100 or whatever it was. So what? So they had to rewrite that whole thing, and I had to go over there. She's in the hospital building attached to Southern Maryland, and she's not the best at calling back. And then when I went over there, I took a picture of the sign, because nobody believed. She had a sign on her door: "Don't even think of coming in here unless you have an appointment." Say what now? And so that just makes you want to open the door and go in. So I took a picture because nobody believed it really said that. And so finally I tracked her. I called everywhere, and I was like, "Listen, you are holding up this little train here that we're on." And so, chasing that down is one. So these group home or assisted living places, they all have sort of that rule that when they go to and from the group home, when they come back, whatever's been added to the thing should be on there. Whatever needs to be taken off should be on it. She had an eye infection the last time. The eye medicine was still on there. You have to take that off. So, this caregiver kind of notebook stuff has helped me to stay on top of it. Wait a minute, that's not, she hadn't taken that, and you take that off, and just kind of stay on top of it. So I applaud the fact that Dr. Adoko has been willing to be that conduit between all these places. Do we wish that all of these portals talk? Because the portals are a fabulous thing, absolutely fabulous thing. Whoever thought of that? Wow. But being able to see the X-ray or the scans or what, the bone scan, whatever it is, to be able to see all that is amazing. And yeah, I do wish you could share, but they can talk amongst themselves and share it, and you can just stay out of it. And which is how they call each other back a lot faster than they call us back, unless you have a Liz. So yeah, and I think that can be challenging. So that's what I would say about that. And I don't know a lot about in Prince George's County, if you need something. And I live literally a mile and a half from the Department of Aging, which is also the senior center and all that, so they're in one building, which is fabulous. And I'm fairly well known there at this point. So if I need something, I go to them first, and they can sort of help you make your way, through some of the rules and regulations that I don't know. Because, that's one of the challenges sometimes, is we don't know everything we don't know, or sometimes you don't know the questions to ask. And that's why I love things like this, because you can, learn from other people and other people's situations and what they had. So I just admire Calvert County for putting this on. And I saw the comment in the chat about how powerful the libraries are. I mean, it is the #1 place for research, and they can help you do so many things. And, there's so many things out there that are free, but if you're trying to decide how to buy medicine and buy food, you don't have time to buy resources. So all the free things you can get, like this, program, and, do your research at the library without having to spend a lot of money, I'm all for that. So, it's been, just a great experience for me connecting with other people who all have the same, the same thing in mind. We want to help, our, person. So
thank you.
Renee, real quick, just real quick. I know there was another question. I just wanted to piggyback off that while it's in my brain. One other thing we learned about when Mom was discharged from the hospital is that the prescription thing also for people who are out in the community can become quite a burden. So they may have had a refill just before they got admitted, and then they get a prescription and they're told, hey, you need to go fill this prescription. It was already just refilled. The hospital or the pharmacy won't. So there's a lot of confusion there. The other thing is we found out very quickly that you can ask a pharmacist what the cash price is for medications. So I'll just give an example. My mom was prescribed an antibiotic when she got discharged, and that antibiotic was going to cost upwards of $100 or something like that for 10 to 14 days through her plan, her insurance plan, for some reason. I have no idea why. And I said, Dad, you need to ask them what the cash price is at the pharmacy. It wound up being like $7. And he paid $7 for 10 to 14 days of that antibiotic. And that antibiotic is on the $4 formulary at Walmart. And so that's how I knew. And so we also have to guide and educate people. And this is on me as a provider to educate, but also, if you have loved ones in the community, tell them, ask about cash prices, ask if they can use, a coupon or a good RX. There's lots of different things now to sort of drive down prices. Insurance companies create formularies, and they accept certain prescriptions, just as you've seen with your Prolia. They will accept only certain things. But many times you can work around that by not only the doctor appealing the decision, but also you can advocate by saying, I would like to know what your cash price is for this prescription. That may also help for a lot of people. And just be mindful that when you get discharged from the hospital, if you go try to refill every prescription, it might not be filled if you've just recently had that filled. Robin just said, ask your doctor to appeal a decision. I didn't know about that. Doctors, absolutely. We can. We call, and many times that's a lot of what we spent our non-patient hours doing is calling insurance companies and appealing. Why won't you cover this MRI? Well, the patient needs to go see an orthopedist first, a bone specialist. Well, I'm sorry, but I know that this person should get an MRI. But many times insurance companies do hold the strings. We can appeal as much as we possibly can, both about prescriptions and imaging and many other things. But sometimes it'll work in our favor and sometimes it doesn't. But yes, absolutely ask your doctor to appeal a decision if there's a, again, with Miss Loretta's Prolia thing, none of those other substitutes are equal to Prolia. We call Prolia liquid gold because it really does a very good job. But it is pricey, and that's why a lot of insurance companies won't do it. So for her circumstance, her doctor's going to need to say, well, she's already tried this, this, and this, or, this is the reason. So ask your doctor to advocate for you. That is our job. And even if we can't do it, oftentimes, like she said about her mom's GP, we can get on the phone and we can call the specialist and say, look, this is what's happening. This person needs this MRI or this person needs this. And sometimes we can make it work a little bit quicker.
Yeah, he told me to ignore the letter, and he was he'll do it all on his end. So I just put it in my list. It's sitting right here in my little file folder. I'm just going to ignore it like he said. And he appealed. And he even told me at the visit, he said, you're going to probably get some pushback, but I'll take care of that. He's like, they're so upfront about it.
Yes. But definitely ask for your doctor or your pharmacist. Pharmacist, one of my good friends from growing up is a pharmacist up in Arnold, Maryland. And, I think many of them want to be able to help in many ways. So ask your pharmacist too, hey, is there a cheaper option for me? Like this is just, I can't afford it. And, hopefully they're good people and they're going to help you out. So I'm sorry, Renee, I didn't mean to interrupt her.
Oh, no, that's perfect. Thank you. That's great information for sure. So Sarah is here from hospice. And let's see, Sarah, can you share how hospice works, the cost, facilities, what can be covered, and does that vary by state? And then how is insurance impacted by signing up for hospice?
Absolutely. So hospice works generally the same state to state. There shouldn't be any financial or insurance differences between states. Some hospice agencies do have services that vary in different areas. So for example, in Maryland, hospices are licensed to serve certain geographic areas. So there's only one hospice that's allowed to serve Calvert County, that's Calvert Hospice. But in Anne Arundel County, there's several hospices that are licensed to serve. It's based on population. So you may have an experience where if you have a loved one in Los Angeles, they might have a hospice that is affiliated, say, with a nursing home or with a home health agency where they can provide services that a smaller hospice might not provide because they aren't part of that affiliation. That's where you might see some of the differences state to state. In terms of cost, there should not be an out-of-pocket cost for hospice unless it is a room and board associated cost with a facility. So most hospice patients are receiving the service through their Medicare Part A benefit. So if you have Part A, that covers hospice care. Other private payers also cover hospice care very similarly. So, your Blue Cross, your Aetna, everybody's got a hospice benefit, TRICARE. Part A is also the part of Medicare that provides hospitalization coverage. So that's where the insurance gets to be impacted by hospice. When you or your loved one elect the hospice benefit, what you are telling your provider, your pay source rather, is I am choosing palliative care that is focused on comfort, care that is focused on improving quality of life, and I am not choosing care that is focused on testing, diagnostics, treatment of this terminal condition. So once you've elected that benefit, if you decide, you know what, I really want to go back and get a CAT scan and just see what is happening with my cancer, or I want to go to the hospital and pursue a treatment that's been offered to me. Because your Medicare Part A benefit is providing hospice, they are not going to pay for a diagnostic or a treatment-based procedure unless it is something that is coordinated with the hospice that is really part of the plan of care. So palliative radiation is an example. Typically, Medicare is not going to pay for a cancer patient to have hospice care as well as chemotherapy or radiation. But if we can show that there's a palliative component, that it's intended to shrink a tumor for pain relief or for improvement of symptoms and not technically for cure, then sometimes insurance will cover that. In terms of room and board, the hospice benefit does not cover room and board. So a hospice facility, like a hospice house, there is going to be an out-of-pocket cost for that to the patient or the caregiver. Most places do have a sliding scale, and charity care is a huge part of what hospice does. So there's always kind of some negotiation there. For nursing homes, you would still be responsible for paying room and board, or if you're on medical assistance, medical assistance would still pay room and board for a nursing home. The big exception is if someone is living in a nursing home and they are getting skilled treatment. So, you hear about your loved one being skilled, either they're receiving high-level wound care, physical therapy, or some of those kind of qualifying therapies that you might get after a hospitalization. Your insurance will not pay for the skilled care and hospice at the same time, sort of the same idea as a hospitalization. So you would need to make a decision to kind of either relinquish those skilled days or postpone the hospice enrollment after those therapies are finished, and then go back, kind of into the routine level of care there at the nursing facility.
A couple comments in the chat. This is a wonderful conversation, which I think we can all agree on. And this person wanted to add that they serve as a note taker with their family members when they have medical meetings, and it's very helpful with follow-up. And Loretta has put her website on the chat as well, www.lorettaveney.com, and her email is there as well. And
I see Dr. Folsom Elder did as well.
Also, yes.
Yeah. Yay.
One other thing that I know it hasn't really been brought up in particular, but I know that we had talked about when we were planning this, is when you do, I know that somebody mentioned the note taker, which is a fantastic role because in many cases, there's just too much to write down probably in many visits. Mm-hmm. But also if you have questions ahead of time, write them down and make a duplicate copy, even, one for yourself to sort of run off of, and then hand one to the provider. If the provider is, if you're trying to screen for a good provider, most providers will be willing to take that list and work off of it. And I will be honest, many times I had to say, well, I'm going to condense this list to the things that I think are my 3 biggest things. What are your 3 biggest things that we need to discuss today? Because we may not have booked the right amount of time for it. certainly when you're coming in for your routine visit, but many things have happened to you, as was the case in COVID. And even beforehand, people would skip 6 to 12 months in between their visits, and they would have had multiple falls. Maybe they tweaked their knee because their dog hit them, or there were lots of things that would come up, or maybe they've been suffering with these headaches. And so, yes, the diabetes and the high blood pressure were important and we needed to get to them. But we also, probably the person that was coming in felt that it was a more important thing that they discussed these other issues. So if you write things down, hand a copy to your doctor or your provider, ask them, look, I know that we might not have the time, but these are the things that really matter to me. Can we go over these and at least start talking about them? And then they may ask you to come back a bit more frequently to sort of get through those things. It might not be a 3 to 6 month visit. It might be a 2 to 3 week visit or something like this. But just to anticipate that might be needed. My analogy used to be, I don't take my car for an oil change and then just throw in there, hey, by the way, this light's been coming on. I've been hearing this sound. So, but I still want it back at 5 o'clock tonight. So there may be times when that happens. And then also, if you get that list and the doctor writes on it, that also becomes a part of your medical record or your loved one's medical record. And that's really easy for people to refer back to. So say my sister wanted all of the details and for my mom or something, then I could say, well, it's in the medical record here. Let me call the doctor's office and then they can give you a copy. I also always gave every patient, once we got electronic records, a checkout note. And I actually typed it while I was saying it. I know some doctors aren't proficient at typing, but I would type it as we were talking. And I would say, these are the things we're going to type in the note. And then that person was handed that note upon checkout, or it was sent to their patient portal. So it's really helpful for providers to give you that feedback and give you that information before you leave so that you have the understanding of what you've gone over. So that would just be my takeaway point from today's discussion, is just make sure that you, that's really important. Your job, the doctor's job is really to help explain things and to sit down with you and to go over those things with you. So, thank you.
It's great. It's Robin again, and I wanted to thank everyone for coming. There are 20 minutes left, but we don't have to use it all. If everyone's had their questions answered, I'll just say that I will send a survey afterwards that gives you an opportunity to say other topics that you think we do need to have training on for our community. I'll also include a link to the YouTube so you can share it with other people, and let's build an army of advocates for our community. So any last questions that anyone has, or any last statements from our panel here, things you would like to share?
I really like the idea of the doing the questions in advance, and sometimes I've sent them forward, the virtual visits in particular, because when virtual visits first started, they were only 15 minutes. You're like, wow, that's like no time. So, and she even canceled one to say, oh, this isn't enough time. We'll delete that one, and we'll add it. And we ended up doing the 40 minutes, which was still over what she had planned. But I have sent questions in advance. What did she think was going to be the response? Raising the doses of the anti-seizure meds. And, because for me, I pretty much knew that also meant she would sleep a lot. So she goes to bed a lot earlier now and that kind of thing. So being able to, so as you said, choose, because the one thing we did that Robin put up, I think, was a little checklist that I added that I had found based on some of the questions that we got in advance to have, with you to sort of guide some of the things. And I love the top 3 kind of things you want to focus on, because like I said, not everything's an emergency, if you will, on that day. So the more we can narrow it down for them and make it easy, because, we also have to realize how many patients they have. And, we all think, everybody loves my mama, and they really do. Then when she was lost at Southern Maryland, the funniest thing that happened was that when they finally did find her, they didn't want to give her back to me. Oh, she's so cute. Yeah, she's cute. Send her back. And can't have her. But then at Washington Hospital, they were fighting over sitting in the room with her and reading. So they enjoyed that week with my mom. And it's good to be that popular. But at the same time, it does give you some indication of, how busy, folks are. So, yeah, I love advice, and that Springwell thing that I mentioned, and a couple of others that are free too, they can certainly help you, hone in on what is the best thing, for right now to focus on, and then wait till the next time. That car analogy is a great one, because you got your little oil change, and I've done that. Oh, this light just came on the drive down. It's been on for 2 weeks. but what do they know? And so they look at the light, but they look at you funny, but they do eventually look at the light, and that's obviously unfair to them as well. So if we consider how many patients they really have, then we can do our part in making sure we get that in. So I just want to close with that. But this has been absolutely fabulous. I appreciate all of the feedback and the questions, and all of the other professionals who joined on this call today. It's been absolutely amazing. I learned a lot as well. So thank you.
Thank you all for your time. That I know this time during COVID has required a lot of the healthcare industry. And so I thank you all very much for sharing so much of your time today and your expertise. And Loretta, great. We've learned so much from your stories. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks again.